Hey guys, welcome back to the Slipstream. I'm Ash.
I'm Trey.
I'm Sachet.
And today we're continuing our long-form episode on Michael Schumacher. This is part 2. And so he's, again, the German racer who drove for Ferrari from the mid-90s to the mid-2000s. The 7 titles guy with over 2 decades of racing tenure. Ring a bell.
Red Baron himself.
So I guess without further ado, let's just get started with this, okay?
All right.
So 2000 is the year that we need to pick up on. So the long-standing rivalry between McLaren and Ferrari as constructors in the Formula One world, and just having the most dominant cars, it kind of came to a head. It just kind of, came to a standstill after Ferrari, developed their car multiple times on multiple occasions. And they really seem to have the upper hand on McLaren going into this new decade, this new century, this new millennia.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. And after a slew of victories in the season opener in Australia, San Marino, Brazil, and the European Grand Prix, it seemed like Schumacher was definitely able to walk away with crown months of ahead of the season finale.
But then again, after 3 consecutive DNFs in France, Austria, and unfortunately on home soil in Germany, Schumacher was only leading the championship ahead of Mika Häkkinen by just a mere 10 points, a drop from 20 points to 10 points, and if you count the point system back then, it wasn't a whole lot even then.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was a close call, though Schumacher made up for that by winning the final 4 rounds of the season, including the second-to-last race, in Japan, where he took the title by securing a 12-point gap to Häkkinen.
Yeah, and if you listen to his radio celebrations after the race, he is flying. He was so happy all the way up until the podium ceremony, and he was so hyped to win this title that he quite literally tried to drown his team in champagne as they
he tried to drown the team boss Jean Todt at the time in basically a bathtub worth of champagne. And he absolutely deserved this title after facing all the adversity from the administration and his teammates.
For sure.
Team error and even skill issues, that he just had to overcome as he learned as a newlywed world champion.
Yeah.
And this is honestly, in my opinion, one of the top 5 radio celebrations behind Max Verstappen's first title in Abu Dhabi 2021, Ayrton Senna finally winning in Brazil in, I believe it was 1989.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, of course, you have Lewis Hamilton breaking the 1,000-day winless streak in Britain 2024. Oddly enough, I was screaming at the TV at the time when this happened, and he was just crying at all of his emotions. No, I'm not making fun of him.
No, of course.
Yeah, so, but going back to Sachet.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so like we said before, given his fall from grace, as we discussed in the last episode, his celebrations here were definitely more than justified. And this victory would not be the only one. This wasn't a fluke. So it would be the first of 5 back-to-back titles for the Red Baron as he officially regained that nickname and as he entered his dominant era of the sport.
So we had discussed that last episode that the Red Baron is what Schumacher is very much known for in Ferrari, and he was just flying in that car. And something worth mentioning is that nobody really talks about his 2001 season, which I find is the most entertaining and most prevalent for me as I got into Formula One racing.
Indeed. So the 2001 season saw Schumacher obviously winning the title again that year, but this time it was by a whopping 58 points over runner-up David Coulthard and 67 points over his teammate in third, Rubens Barrichello.
So Rubens Barrichello.
And if you guys feel that David Coulthard is a kind of a familiar name, you might recognize, if you're a new Formula One fan, he's actually one of the commentators for the past couple years. I'm not exactly sure.
I think he's been a commentator ever since the COVID era of racing.
That's what I was assuming. Yeah. And so if you watch any Formula races currently, you'll see him as a interviewer or a commentator all the time, along with Jolyon Palmer and Jenson Button. Sometimes Danica Patrick, but we don't
Listen,
speak about her.
we don't speak about her. She actually ruined a lot of stuff for me.
Oh, absolutely.
But going
So
back to Schumacher, he won the 2001 title at the Hungarian Grand Prix that August. It was the fifth to last round of the season with 8 weeks to go, and he broke the record for the most races to go after winning the World Drivers' Championship at the time, and he would break the record the very next year in 2002. Speaking of which, Ash, you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, so going into his 2002 season, he actually set a legendary record.
Yeah, so the 2002 season saw the only season in which a driver would score a podium finish in every single racing event. Now, of course, considering the fact that sprint races didn't exist until, 2021, and the fact that there were a lot less races on the season, it's still a very, very impressive feat. And actually, there were a substantial amount of races. I mean, there were 15, 16 that season?
Yeah, so actually, this was kind of an understatement because he accumulated 144 points and won the title with his teammate, Barrichello, who gained 77 points, and he scored nearly double the amount of his teammates with only 6 races left to go in the season.
I mean, that's just ridiculous. And according to my calculations, F1 began using modern-day point system in the season. Had the modern-day system be put in place, Schumacher would have only had 380 points by the end of the season.
And this would put him a whopping 380 points. This would put him in a top 10 highest scoring season for any world championship in the history of the sport.
Exactly.
Absolutely. If you guys think 144 was big in terms of points right now, 380 is blowing it out of the water.
Talk about a substantial comeback, seriously.
And I know that, Schumacher was known for saying records are there to be broken, but I think he was underestimating himself in this circumstance. I mean, I don't think you can ever really break that. The closest that anyone ever really came to breaking that record was Max Verstappen in the 2023 season.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, he did score a top 3 position in each of the sprint races, but he had just missed out because he failed to score a podium in Singapore, which is a bit of a cursed track for Max.
It is definitely a cursed track. It is a lovely track for Carlos Sainz, though. He won it 23 and 24, not 25, I don't think. I kind of associate Singapore with Carlos these days. But going into Schumacher's 2003 season, it's actually the second closest title-winning season of his career, just behind the astounding 1994 season that we talked about earlier. And not only was Kimi Räikkönen, also named the Iceman, love him, challenging him for the title, but he's also the rising number 1 in Formula One, Juan, who was also competing.
So sorry about that tongue twister I put in the script, but I'm making a bit of a niche reference to this joke interview that Juan Pablo Montoya, who was the Williams driver of that season in 2003, who was also competing for the title. So a couple of Australian journalists came in to one of the press conferences, and they wrote a couple of joke questions. One of them was a tongue twister that went exactly like this. The rising number 1 in Formula One wonders, should Juan only win one Formula One year? Would Juan want to have won that one in round 1? Juan.
Take a shot every time you said one, folks.
And I just love the niche Montoya references. So in the opening half of the season, McLaren actually sort of took the spotlight, with Coulthard winning the season opener in Australia and Raikkonen taking positions in Brazil's San Marino and Austria.
But let's not discount Schumacher. I mean, he won his first home race. Well, actually, no. It wasn't his home race. It was his first home race for the team at San Marino. And he also did pretty well to take the victory in Austria. But he only had a 3-point advantage to Kimi Räikkönen by the middle of the season. And he lost out to Juan Pablo Montoya in his home race where he represents his country of Germany.
Yeah, and so considering that Schumacher qualified 14th at the final race in Japan, and Raikkonen needed to win from A's, it seemed like the Iceman really wanted to ice him out. So
yeah, unfortunately, Schumacher would surpass Raikkonen later on in the race, and he would take his 6th title of his career by just 2 points. So the competition, granted, was very, very close that year. But then again, Kimi Räikkönen ran into a lot of reliability issues, including the Turkish Grand Prix of that year, where his engine, I believe, stalled out, and he was in the lead of that race. And yeah, it was just a very unfortunate moment from him, very bad timing. And I feel like this is the first time that Schumacher really felt under pressure.
I was about to say the same thing because you can see Schumacher being at a peak throughout the 90s, and then getting into 2003, you can really see the pressure building on him from Coulthard, from Juan, from all the other drivers, Raikkonen, and this actually gave him
We're trying to say, like, it gives him a boost of confidence?
Yes.
It gives him confidence.
Confidence and validity. That's the word. It gave him a solid amount of validation as a driver, and that just proved that he was a top contender, top driver. And
Yeah, I mean, some people are probably still harping on the fact that he's a Nepo baby, but guess what? Nepo babies are talented if they want to be.
Exactly. So we have the outstanding 1994 season.
The 2004, you mean?
The 1994.
Oh, the 1994. Oh, my bad.
Prime 2001 season. So now we're going to get into 2004.
Yes. So just to put it into perspective, I just brighten up whenever I talk about it. I just light up whenever I talk about it. So Schumacher won 13.
Prime.
He is literally the pinnacle of motorsport gods. He won 13 out of 18 races that season and had his only DNF at the Monaco Grand Prix, which didn't even come from a mechanical issue or a car issue of some sorts. He just crashed out under the safety car at the end of the casino tunnel. And had he not done that, he would have set a record that not even Max Verstappen would have been able to break. He would have had the longest win streak with 13 wins.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was just like he could have technically gone on to win every single race had the car been in a steady line of development, had they not tampered around with their car to make it actually worse in the preseason testing. Because if you remember, in preseason testing 2004, the car was 2 seconds faster than the second best car in the grid.
Yes.
But Ferrari even thought it was a bit too fast for themselves, so they punished themselves by going slower.
I feel like it's just a self-destruction thing that Ferrari continues to do.
Yeah.
And that's insane because considering how the cars were still sort of unreliable at that time, to mess with the car seems just a crazy idea. And so the only reason Schumacher failed to win the other 4 races was because due to team error, so not his personal fault, and also one spinning out in China. And even then, he set the Chinese Grand Prix lap record, and that still holds up to this day, which just proves that that's one of the 77 fastest lap times.
Yeah, I don't think people really understand how impactful it is to hold up a record on a circuit for 2 decades, especially considering that these cars ran on entirely different engines, entirely different chassis, had entirely different integrity, fueling systems, oil, floorings, every single thing about tires. And I think the only other driver who has managed to uphold a lap record for over 2 decades is Pedro de la Rosa in Bahrain in 2005. And he was actually standing in for one of his teammates at the time, which I personally find a little bit more impressive, but then again, I'm not trying to discount one over the other. They're both really impressive.
I do agree with that. I do find it a slightly more a top notch above the other one. But
certainly.
Going on to Alonso's comeuppance in 2005. This is prime Alonso, and this is where you really start to see Alonso shining. And personally, 2004, 2005 are some of my favorite seasons of Formula One.
Yeah, so, I mean, Ash, do you want to break down Alonso's prime for us?
Of course, I would love to. So this 2-time champion and the guy with the most memorable one-liners took Renault and the 2005 season by storm, and he won 3 out of the first 4 races consecutively, I might add, at Malaysia, Bahrain, and San Marino. San Marino is getting all the action from these big legends at San Marino. And he won 3 more races, including the season finale in China.
Yeah, and, given Schumacher's only win of that season came at the United States Grand Prix in Indianapolis, please excuse me for this terrible pun. The Red Baron was descending.
I guess he was, and Alonso just won with 133 points, with Raikkonen following behind with 112. But Schumacher finished with just 62 in third, less than half the points of his rivals. And how do you think the boys and girls at Renault got it right?
Honestly, I have to use his name in good conscience, Flavio Briatore. Flavio Briatore, in spite of all of his cheating scandals and his lack of any good work ethic and lack of any good redeeming qualities, he still drove this team to the very top. And there is no doubt in my mind that he's not the smartest businessman in the world, but he's definitely the most sly businessman in the world. He's definitely the slickest, the illest, thickest, everything.
I do agree. And then transitioning from 2005 to 2006, we're continuing with the Alonso power through, with him winning 6 out of the 9 races exactly halfway through the season, including a home win at Spain. And then, hot take, I think this is the most enthralling and iconic home win in F1 just behind Senna's amazing Brazil win.
Yeah, because think about it, it was the prime of Alonso. And
yes.
Again, we're gonna take it forward to Lewis winning in 2024 in Britain, breaking the 1,000-day win streak. He was not dominant at all up until that point. And even though it was much more cathartic to see him finally come back on top and just, feel the glory again, Alonso was just caught up in the glory. He was the glory of that season.
Oh, I definitely agree. When I hear 2005, I hear Alonso. If I hear Alonso, I'm thinking 2005 prime. And I'm proud to associate that with my birth year.
Same
But yeah, so Schumacher would actually win in the USA, France, and Germany races back to back. And so he looked poised for a title comeback. He was pretty ready. But Alonso would clutch at the penultimate race in Japan and take second and last title.
Last title for now, because remember, he's still a rookie.
He's still a rookie.
He has time to win. Come on now, he's young.
I think he still has.
He has more time to cook.
Yeah,
let's say that.
He's hot. He's sexy. He's got all the qualities to win the title.
I think he still has another win in him.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just the hope in me talking.
No, that's not the hope in you talking. That is the facts in you talking. We're manifesting his win. Come on, tap in the comments below and manifest his win.
Though, taking it back to Schumacher, his era of dominance, unfortunately, in this first stint of F1, would come to an end after retiring from the sport at the end of the season. So, he obviously won again with 134 points in the bag, but the Ferrari duo in Schumacher and Massa would follow behind with 121 and 80 points respectively, meaning Ferrari had the potential to win the Constructors' title, but unfortunately never did.
And just thinking about, was it a decline in Ferrari, or was it a comeuppance in Renault? Was it Schumacher just not feeling the fight and the fire in his belly as much as he did in the previous years? What do you guys think it was?
I think it's a little bit of both, because if you guys remember back in the early 2000s, Renault was definitely a big team that really powered through it. We didn't really expect a rookie team like that to just come in blazing, but they did, and that was definitely a shocker, I feel, to the other teams for Renault to have such a big impact so early on in their in Renault's career. And so catching the others by surprise, that was definitely a deciding factor in Ferrari's decline, or Schumacher's decline. But also Ferrari has had long-standing issues that definitely probably has worn down on Schumacher. And I feel that him as a driver did not contribute to his decline. I feel the skills were still sharp. It hasn't been that many years. It was definitely a product of the team environment and Renault.
But I do find it ironic that once Kimi Räikkönen took Schumacher's place in Ferrari, he won the title on his debut season.
That is true.
Then again, this is my honest opinion, he's the Iceman. He can do whatever the hell he wants.
See, that's the other thing. I feel that the team environment strikes many drivers, but not the Iceman. I feel he is just one driver that is
He's not unfazed, and he doesn't tune out everything. Of course, he still listens to the telemetry and all the data and his engineers, but he has this sense of complete and total calm about him. He can tap in and he can tap out at his own on his own terms.
Exactly, and we can see this as a kind of a turning point for drivers, because we've had drivers up until this point really working together with their team, and so Raikkonen brought in a fresh kind of perspective of being able to detach from your team, of being able to go against team orders, and being able to be more of an independent sort of driver who doesn't really, you know what I'm trying to say?
I know what you're trying to say.
He was kind of a predecessor for Max Verstappen to be the kind of rebellious driver he is.
Right, and also a fun fact about Michael Schumacher. Did you know that he was supposed to replace Felipe Massa for the remainder of the 2009 season, but
really?
couldn't because he got into his first accident of that kind of 5-year period where he broke, I believe it was his leg or his arm in a bicycling accident. So basically, Felipe Massa got concussed by a loose spring that came out of the bottom of Rubens Barrichello's Braun GP car, and it immediately knocked him out, and he went full speed into the barriers, and you could tell by the photos that the journalists took that he was completely knocked out.
Yeah, for sure.
So they just had to go with, Luca Badoer, and obviously Ferrari didn't really have a come up for the rest of the season.
But what did happen with Schumacher after he came back to the sport in 2010? So what happened was that his name was seen in the League of Sport for the first time since the late 1950s, and you want to explain the hiatus that happened?
Yeah, so Mercedes was under a lot of controversy for its endurance cars, causing the most spectator deaths per event in the middle of the 20th century. So for branding reasons, they pulled out of all motorsport-related phenomena until their endurance league returned in the mid-1990s, and as discussed here, in Formula Sports as well.
Yeah, of course, their return to endurance racing in the 90s was not clean whatsoever. If you remember the Mark Webber flying incident at, I believe it was the Nürburgring in 1999. He obviously flew midair and into a bunch of trees and a bunch of patches of bushes. So they pulled out of endurance racing right then and there, and they continued manufacturing engines for, McLaren and I believe at some point BAR up until Honda took over them. And then they came back as the Mercedes brand, not Mercedes-AMG Petronas, but just the Mercedes brand in 2010. Starter sponsorships, starter funds, starter everything.
Yeah. But let's just say that the controversy that followed Schumacher's results rather than Mercedes' history. So he would score a best of only 4th place at Spain, Turkey, and South Korea. And he would come out in 9th in the WDC with just 72 points and not leading a single race. So
yeah, I mean, think about it though. Mercedes was still a new team, and you do have to give them credit for providing Schumacher with a car that's at least drivable.
To fight Vettel and Alonso.
Yeah, fight Vettel and Alonso, and for that matter, Hamilton and Webber, who were also contending for the title. And I mean, Nico Rosberg, his teammate at the time,
This is controversial because as he was not performing very well. On the other hand, you have Nico Rosberg getting 3 podiums as Schumacher 0, and he only finished in 7th. So.
Yeah, but even then, he only finished in 7th place, so it's not like he was completely dominating his teammate, but he was showing up just a little bit more.
7th in a new team is very
7th in a new team is really impressive, though. I can't deny that.
So this is where I would officially say this starts Schumacher's decline. This is where I officially call it. But yeah, despite being more consistently in the top 5 in 2011, Schumacher only finished 1 place higher in the WDC with 4 points more. But despite Toto Wolff being introduced to the team in the very next year, 2012, it was still the pit of Schumacher's career, yeah?
By far, I would say. So Schumacher, in the beginning of the 2012 season, retired from 4 of the first 6 races. I believe half of those were due to personal error, and I believe the other half was due to team error and problems with the car. And he would have his final 2 moments of glory in this league of motorsport and motorsport for the rest of his life, pretty much, when he took provisional pole position in Monaco. But of course, he had a 5-place grid drop, I believe it was, because he had to change his engine components. And it would get worse because he would unfortunately retire from that race.
Yeah.
And then you want to go over the European Grand Prix podium?
Yeah, so he joined the winner, Alonso, and a second place with Raikkonen on the podium for his only podium in silver and the last of his racing career ever, and that was his peak moment of glory.
And we're not discounting the fact that he scored points in his final ever race at Mercedes and in racing overall at the Brazilian Grand Prix, where he did secure a solid P7 finish and attributed that to his mentee, Sebastian Vettel, to win that title that year.
Yeah, so he kind of let him pass. So Michael Schumacher kind of let Sebastian Vettel pass. I believe it was in the opening stages of the Brazilian Grand Prix after Vettel spun out to the dead end of the grid, and he kind of helped him win his 3rd world title by just 3 points over the far more dominant, and in my personal opinion, in that season, far more skilled Fernando Alonso.
Oh, yeah. And so Michael just plummeted to the statistical low of his career by finishing P13 in the WDC with only 49 points, just ahead of Pastor, or should I say
Castro Maldonado. So Pastor Maldonado, I mean, Venezuelan driver. We can get into him later on if we talk about probably some of the worst semi-skilled or worst best drivers on the grid. Because, of course, he did have that one win in Spain, but then again, I feel like that was one of the biggest one-offs and the biggest lucky break of his career.
Now, this is where it starts getting a bit devastating. Just a year into his retirement in late 2013, Schumacher, his wife, and kids all go to the Alps for a little skiing trip. And so things are going well until he...
Yeah, so according to autopsy reports, and I believe it was some of the medical staff and investigators, he was going down he wasn't even going down at that high of a speed down the ski slope. And he just happened to catch just a little bit of air after he kind of skimmed a rock, and it led to him, kind of flipping upside down, and he banged his skull.
It was actually a crack in his neck.
It was a crack in his neck. He banged his neck, I believe it was on a rock.
Yeah,
so he banged his neck on a rock. He was immediately incapacitated, immediately knocked out, and helicopters had to airlift him to the hospital, and I cannot even imagine what the scenes were like there and what his family's reaction was like.
Yeah, so he's been paralyzed from the neck down for years now. And I think we got word last year, 2024.
I think it was 2 years ago in 2023, actually.
I'm pretty sure it's 2024. I think it was definitely 2024.
What was it?
Where we should look it up. But,
yeah, definitely.
What year?
But we got the news last year, I think, that he is fully recovered and is enjoying recovery time in his home, staying away from the spotlight, and his family is doing a great job of keeping him out of the spotlight and away from any media at all. And actually, as he put in his news that he recovered, Mick Schumacher, his son at the same time, also announced that he will be getting back into racing as well.
He will get back into racing. So Mick Schumacher at the time was, I believe, if we look up his age, he is currently 26 years old, so that means at the time he was around about 14 years old, 14, 15-ish years old when his dad was at the absolute pit of his recovery from his paralysis, and he obviously took a break from his junior karting leagues, and he eventually came back into the spotlight in 2018 and 2019 in F2 and F3.
And this is where he was mostly training, some practicing, Some races here and there, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he officially announced it last year along with the recovery of Michael Schumacher. And I feel like that's two great news is tied up in a bow. And so Mick Schumacher is getting into Formula 2? Or is
No, it was 2018 and 2019 he was in Formula 3 and Formula 2.
Okay.
And then he secured a seat with the Ural-Kali Haas
Yes.
team in 2021 alongside Nikita Mazepin, which in my opinion is the worst
I think that's a bad
lineup
setup.
in the
It's a bad
history
duo.
of in the entirety of Formula 1. It's even worse than, Narain Karthikeyan and the other guy in the Catherham team.
Uh-huh.
It's worse than Marussia. Haas in 2021 was the pinnacle of everything wrong with F1, just fundamentally.
I do agree.
You had payments and investments through the Russians, which obviously don't have a good reputation with the elites. You had Nikita Mazepin, who actually had an assault case nearly filed on him before he got his career started.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you had Gunter, who instead of a rock star was looking like another word. But anyways, going back to Mick Schumacher, he had just not that good of an F1 career, and it wasn't really, he didn't have that good of a start in an F1 career or an F1 career overall, but it mostly wasn't his fault. It was mostly the fault of, his team not preparing him to be able to drive in a car that could score points at least.
Absolutely, and it was just I think it was fault of a situation.
Yeah, and
it was a rocky start for Mick.
He didn't have his dad with him to support him either, and I don't think people realize how much trauma one can bear from a situation like that, but to still be able to chase after your career and do pretty well, as in Mick Schumacher's case. I mean, he is still in endurance racing and he's got a pretty good record. To be able to do all of that is probably one of the strongest, most resilient, toughest nails things that you could do as a race car driver.
I definitely agree, and Schumacher's eventual return, or at least, I'm going to talk about Mick first. So Mick's return back to the public eye has definitely been met with a lot of positive, positive vibes from fans, from potential people who want to sign him, teams, fellow racers, and they're definitely excited to have him join again because he has proved to be a good racer. Again, it's just a it's just a situation that is affecting his racing, I feel. And with Michael Schumacher in recovery, how do you think that would look in the public eye?
Well, I mean, I just looked it up. He was last reported on in September of 2024. Mm-hmm. Well, first reported on ever since his paralysis back in 2013. Year. So it took 11 years for, somebody to finally, spill the tea about him. Mm-hmm. And I feel like since it was they were trying to treat this with a lot of nuance, and very understandably, because you don't want to jump the gun, you don't want to say anything or disclose any sort of information that you wouldn't want anyone to hear about your family. But I do feel like he could come back to the public eye, but very briefly, and the family is going to be very, very strict about who can see him. I don't even think...
Yeah. It's as I said before, the family has been very separated from the public eye, from media in general, and I don't feel like Schumacher is going to be coming back into racing, maybe a little Gunther Steiner situation, I don't know.
At least I don't see him coming back for another 10 years or so.
10 years may be a
10
stretch.
years is a bit of a stretch. I'd say 5 at most, maybe about 3 at least.
I do agree with that.
And even then, I don't think even they would let somebody like Fernando Alonso come to visit Schumacher on a regular basis. Not because, they have a hatred for each other or they have this long-standing rivalry, but just because, you got to be careful with these kinds of things.
For sure.
Absolutely.
So, there is a lot of uncertainty about Schumacher and, the future, what kind of brings with him to the future. But what we do know is that we've had the best time ever recording this long-form episode for you guys. So make sure you tune in with us to the last episode of the year coming in a couple of weeks' time after Thanksgiving break. But for now, thank you so much for tuning into the Slipstream Podcast. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Spotify. For that, I'm Trey.
I'm Ash.
I'm Sachin.
And we will see you guys next time. See ya.
Bye.
See ya.